So I'm Peter Kenagy, a lifelong farmer and a resident of Albany, Oregon, and since 1985, this property. We have 450 total acres here. About 325 of it is tillable. The balance is in riparian area. In sloughs, we have well over a mile of sloughs and probably close to 2 miles of off-channel habitat, slough type stuff, and over a mile of river frontage on the Willamette, just north of Albany. Our primary crops historically were vegetable crops for processing, and we kind of branched out into seed. Early on native seed, and then commercial grass and vegetable seed, 20 plus years ago, and have gotten out of the processed vegetables and are now predominantly seed crops of various types. We also have a livestock component now. We have played with livestock at various times and struggled with trying to figure out how to make it efficient and pay and not beat ourselves to death in the winter, and, with a 365-day care of livestock. But so we are, if you look on a map of Benton County, we are the easternmost point in Benton County. And so if you look at the county map, we're in a bend in the river. Albany's over there. The Albany bridges are off over there. Everything below this bench here is seasonal floodplain, and the river runs in a curve around that way, and down to the north of us here there is a inlet to the sloughs. When the river rises, it comes up and it backs up and it starts to fill these sloughs. And as the sloughs fills and the river gets higher, it spreads out into the field. And if it gets up closer to flood stage, the river will start to break the bank to the south of us there and over there, and we'll start to get some flow this way. But in general, when the river comes up, it backs in, deposits a lot of sediment, a lot of weed seeds, and provides a lot of habitat for ducks and fish and other things, and then it goes back out. So we don't have a erosion problem from floodwaters to speak of. And so to the right of that brown spot is actually what would potentially an emergent wetland.
Right.
It fills up, and in the spring it's hugely productive if we have the water in there, because it's open, it's low, and the amphibians, and it's great juvenile salmonid habitat when the water conditions are right. And the other area is, I didn't want to turn it into trees. I wanted a few trees. And so that little patch of brown you see out there actually has maybe 5 or 6 Oregon oak in it. And, at some point they'll get thinned out to where there'll maybe be 3, 4 in there at the max, and hopefully we'll end up, in a couple hundred years with big, nice, open-grown oak and with an understory of native brush, and it's, it's primarily the brush, and it is primarily spirea, rose, 9-bark, some elderberry, snowberry, a bunch of different plants that all they all provide nectar at some point in the season, and a lot of habitat for certain species. One of the actual big challenges of managing an emergent wetland like I wanted it to is that it tends to shift over time to willows, which have a lifespan of, from my estimation, of around 40 years. They'll grow up about 40 years and then they'll just fall over. And they'll fall over, but they don't die. And then they re-sprout out. So you have a slough, which when we first, when I was a kid and running around here and we first started farming it, there was a lot more open water. And all of those willows have fallen in and just choked and made a very much a dark, dense monoculture that is really not very productive for a lot of things. I mean, it's a certain type of habitat and it's good to have some of it, but we've had too much of it. And so one of the things we've done is try to reopen up some of those places. And, that's one of the functions of that other lower wetland there to the right there, of that brush, is that in the spring, when the water goes down, there's usually a fair bit of water there. We get a lot of emergent wetland plants, and, the amphibians and stuff, they just go crazy in there if the conditions are right. And the salmonids that we have here that come in as smolts in high water in December, January, whenever the conditions are right, will stay in here until the water drops too much and they have to get out. But they really utilize those areas at certain times of the year, and they grow really well there. And we've done enough fish sampling here in the past that we have documentation of that. So this was one of my first high density brush plantings. 10-12 years ago, we were upgrading an old pivot that was here in the field to my south, and I bought a couple acres off the neighbor so I could move my pivot point that way, get a little bigger circle, more efficiently use that, and allowed me to put in this upper pivot here, and these oats and arugula, volunteer arugula. And when I did that, I ended up with something just shy of an acre that we used to farm at the end of the slough. And so what do you do with it? And this was one of my first attempts at a high density brush planting, and that was all done with cuttings. Well, virtually all done with cuttings and some seed. And one of the mistakes I had made early on when I started planting trees was planting them too thick, planting species that get too tall next to the fields that will have since come to be a big detriment in just because of the shade. So this planting was designed very intentionally with you can just see there's a couple of cottonwoods farther away, and I probably got too many in there, and some of those cottonwoods need to come out. There's 4 over there. I'm probably going to at some point eliminate that to just 1. You can start to see the oak trees in there sticking up above, and these oak trees have done really well. And we don't have a huge amount of oak trees on this place. You know, our tree species are predominantly ash and maple, cottonwood, and willow. And you know, cottonwoods are problematic for a lot of reasons and don't have a lot of economic value, and they get too big. And ash trees are a great tree, but I'm concerned about the eventual arrival of the emerald ash borer. And once that happens, I'm just afraid things are going to look really ugly around here, because we could lose a huge proportion of our tree cover in these sloughs. And so I haven't planted an ash tree in a long time. I'll let them volunteer, and some places we do get a lot of volunteers, but I've become much more strategic in my tree planting over the years, and it's one of the things that's easy to when you start to do it, it's really hard to visualize what it's going to look like in 30 years, 50 years, or 100 years, which is the time frame that one needs to be thinking about when you plant trees. And I wish I would have had somebody that could have told me that information back when I was doing it. This is the canvas.
Oh, this is the canvas.
This is the shorter canvas, and there's actually
look at
there's a hummingbird. Look at the hummingbird.
Oh, let's go. He's knocking
And it's just
bee off.
you know, when I pulled up there, I mean, there's lots of bumblebees up there.
Yeah.
I was surprised how much there.
So you planted canvas too?
Yeah, I planted this, and I you know, early on when I had this stand, one showed up. I never thought about this area as being a place to grow camas.
Right, yeah.
And but one showed up here on its own, and I thought, well, what the hell? I had bare aisles. This was before I planted all the brush in there, and I planted it there quite a number of years ago. And it takes a lot of years for it to actually flower. But I actually got a nice. I got a nice stand in here, and there's this one here. What? If you look down this edge here, you can just see how things are leaning.
Yeah.
And how they're pushing those black walnuts. And it start to look long term what's going to happen. We don't want those. We don't want huge cottonwood trees there. They're going to overtop those black walnuts and fall. And these cottonwoods are really too thick to get a nice stand of, you know, if you want to get the big, huge cottonwoods that'll last 100 years, you need to give them a little more space than what these are. And we probably thinned them too late. You know, and if you don't design your plantings, yeah, you never get it right. You never get it right. And you always have to figure out how to make tweaks if you want to get to your end goal.
Well, most people don't do this size of planting.
No, but it applies to little plantings just as well. It applies to any size planting.
Right. But
I mean, you can't just look at what you want in the next 5, 10, 50. When you plant a tree that is potentially to live to be 150 years old, you need to think about what it's going to look like then, and how do you get it there and end up with a stable structure that you want, that is your desired goal. You know, one of the interesting things I've done is, you know, all my screenings from my native seed, the forbs and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, what do you do with it? You can't sell it.
Oh, so you just dumped it out?
Well, I spread it out in these aisles.
Is this Oregon Sunshine?
Yeah, that's Oregon Sunshine.
Okay.
That's Prunella. There's yarrow in there. And this was planted 2 years ago. It was scattered in here 2 years ago.
Oh,
and,
so it's
and
still
it
coming
wasn't,
back.
Well, it doesn't get very big the first year. It doesn't get, and this year it's actually going to get full size. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff in there I don't like, but
Where's the prunella? I see the yarrow. Where's the prunella?
right here.
Oh, right
That's
there.
prunella.
Okay.
This is prunella.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There's 2 native patches that I know of on the place, and I've scattered a few more seed. I tried to establish one, but I've been seeing more plants around. And if you can get established, it'll persist a long time. It'll persist a long time.
And not having ivy or something else.
Or blackberries or something to, yeah.
Oh, the bindweed.
I'm a landowner. I mean, I'm more than a farmer. I'm a land manager, you know, and it's, I own it, technically own it, you know, until I die. I'm gonna own it, and you know, I have a responsibility to it, and you know, I just get enjoyment out of. I mean, I appreciate wildlife. I'm a hunter. I like to shoot ducks. I enjoy seeing different kinds of birds, and yeah, no, it's just, it's a responsibility of any landowner to do a good job of maintaining their what they have.